We've taken the time to dive into the numbers, and I've read your comments on our last live stream. Let's run through some of these, and I want to just go ahead and address them. Nico wasn't propped up by elite quarterback play. He was dealing with injuries and pushed down by terrible quarterback play in his first few years. Also, Tank Dell was a dog out of Houston. Some of the best feet in the league. These guys are really good. CJ Stroud is amazing, but these guys are elite too. Next one. I don't know. Nico's moving up my rankings. Stefan's going to be attracting the best cornerback. The next one. I'd go grab Tank Dell. He'll be wide open with so much attention on Diggs and Nico. The one who lost out is Noah Brown. The next one, which will leave Tank Dell in the open field. So this is what we see a lot of times when you have that stud wide receiver going to an offense. The argument, oh, this is going to help everyone. He's going to be getting double teamed. Good luck guarding Tank Dell. Good luck not allowing him to have 200 receiving yards a game. The reality of the situation is there are a few wide receivers in the NFL that fit a profile where they are going to help the other wide receivers in their offense while not commanding a lot of target volume themselves. The wide receivers that look like that, I mean, a good example would be a previous Buffalo Bill, someone named Gabe Davis. Now, when you're looking for this kind of profile, what you want is you want a wide receiver that's going to go out there and he's going to command just 4, 5, maybe 5 targets per game. Really not a lot of volume, but he's going to be running routes deep downfield. He's going to be taking away safety attention, and the defensive coordinator is going to have to actually plan for this deep threat. It's the Gabe Davis mold. Obviously, the best guy ever maybe at it was Deshaun Jackson, but that's, I mean, so rare. The vast majority of the time, you go through, you add in one of these alpha wide receivers, it would be phenomenal if they can boost the offense by 5 to 10%, right? If Stefon Diggs comes over and he can somehow make the Houston Texans 7% more productive through the air, oh my gosh, a great move by Houston. You should be freaking pumped. But you do the numbers and you look, okay, maybe they get a bump by 7% with their overall passing volume, which would be a smash hit for the Texans. But Stefon Diggs historically, or Alpha X wide receiver historically, throw in whatever name you want, takes 25% of the targets. Takes 20% of the targets. So it doesn't really matter if he's boosting the overall offensive production and the offensive efficiency. If he is taking a considerable amount of target volume, it is going to hurt the other wide receivers in this offense, and there's no other way you can get around that. Now, to dive in a little bit deeper, so the Bills get a 2nd round pick. The Texans get Stefon Diggs, a 5th, a 6th, and then obviously the contract that comes along with Diggs and that they're going to have to pay the guy. And I have been, previously coming out here and kind of poking fun at Stefon Diggs, where we tweeted this out at the beginning of the year. Stefon Diggs, since Ken Dorsey was fired, 9 games, 75 targets, 388 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 5 games with less than 30 yards, 0 games with more than 100. So yes, Stefon Diggs obviously was much worse after the change in offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills this past season. And then I went through and I was saying last year as well is while Tank Dell is fun and all, the reality is CJ Stroud is playing MVP level football with subpar weapons. Don't try to convince yourself Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Devin Singletary aren't a below average supporting cast. I think Devin Singletary is one of the worst starting running backs in the NFL. I think Dalton Schultz is a bad starting tight end in the NFL. I think Nico Collins and Tank Dell are solid wide receivers, but I think it makes so much sense for Houston to go out there and grab that alpha in Stefon Diggs. So, if we're looking at where we are going forward with these guys, I think Stefon Diggs is a wide receiver that was previously a top 5 talent at the position at the NFL level. He proved this over a very large sample where, you look over the past 4 years for the Buffalo Bills, over that large sample, he averaged 81 receiving yards per game. But is he still a top 5 talent at the wide receiver? Of course not. You have serious red flags based on what we saw in the second half of the season. Some people want to make the excuse that he was playing through an injury. Pretty much everybody's playing through injuries at the NFL level. Some people want to say it's just the offensive coordinator. Some people want to say he's washed. I think it's probably a little bit of a combination of the three. Stefon Diggs is going to be 31 this next year, of course, we can't say just because he used to be a top 5 guy, he's still a top 5 guy. No, that's not necessarily how it works. But Stefon Diggs still has that track record. I mean, this past year, if we go through and look at 30-year-old wide receivers dating back to the year 2000 through the road of his screener to get a sense of other wide receivers that had similar seasons to Stefon Diggs. Keenan Allen at 30 years old in 2022 had a similar season. Julian Edelman in 2016, Calvin Johnson 2015, Hines Ward, Donald Driver, Derek Mason, Terrell Owens, Troy Brown, and Keenan McCardle. So if you're looking at this, the range of outcomes that we have seen for a wide receiver that just posted this type of 30-year-old season going into their age 31 year is we've seen 2 guys in Terrell Owens and Keenan Allen post more than 20 points per game the following season. But the vast majority of the other players, the median projections, more so about like 15, 16 points per game, right? So not necessarily expecting Stefon Diggs to fall off a cliff, but not expecting him to have some kind of massive bounce back. Now, going over to what we are looking at with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, we just had to move them down, the rankings on the side. I'm sorry, Stefon Diggs coming over will hurt. Previously, I had Nico Collins and Tank Dell ranked as high-end wide receiver 2s in Dynasty. A lot of this to do with the fact that they're pretty good wide receivers attached to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, I've moved them down to being mid wide receiver 2s in Dynasty. I have Nico Collins, Tank Dell at wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 21. I have them right alongside the rookie pick 108. Now, with that being said, this is a super flex pick. If you go over and look at my one quarterback rankings on the site, you'll see obviously that they're much higher than the 108 over there. And of course, if you ever want to check out any of our rankings, you can find them all on flogfantasy.com. We actually just launched something on flogfantasy.com where you can link your team with Sleeper and you can see exactly how I look at your entire league. And you can see exactly how pretty much all the creators and all the experts over on the site value your teams in your league. If you're a contender, if you're a rebuilder, obviously this all comes with the Dynasty Trade Calc, Dynasty Trade Finder, all the premium content, all the rankings, all on flogfantasy.com. Code FLOG will get you 30% off any sub. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team in a podcast. But yeah, moving over and looking at Nico Collins, the wide receiver that through the first 2 years of his career dealt a very bad quarterback play, wasn't really good at all through it. 31 receiving yards per game, then 48 receiving yards per game through his first 2 seasons. Year 3, massive breakout. I mean, Nico Collins, phenomenal this past season. 86 receiving yards per game. If we go through and look at the road of his screener for other 24-year-old wide receivers to post a similar season to what we just had with Nico Collins at 24, you had Jalen Waddle, perform similarly in 2022. You had Devonta Smith in 2022. You had Chris Godwin in 2020, Tyler Boyd in 2018, Will Fuller in 2018, Allen Hurns 2015, Jerome Simpson 2010, Greg Jennings 2007, and Santana Moss in 2003. Now, going over to Tank Dell, if you look at Dell's season through the lens of him just being a rookie wide receiver, you should be so freaking pumped, right? I mean, Dell, from a rookie perspective, also phenomenal season. 64.5 receiving yards per game, 75 targets through only 11 games played. But Tank Dell turns 25 this year. Tank Dell turns like 25 in October. So very different than like a rookie season that Drake London had, right? Where Drake London is like 2 years younger than Tank Dell. So you really shouldn't be looking at him through the lens of a rookie. And more so, you should be looking at him through the lens of a 24-year-old option. We go through and look at the road of his screener. The other 24-year-old wide receivers he comps to: Nico Collins, Devonta Smith, Chris Godwin, Tyler Boyd, Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams, Martavis Bryant, Allen Hurns, Greg Jennings, as well as Santana Moss. Now, what's interesting is if you are projecting this out for the long term, still Nico Collins and Tank Dell are the guys that you'd rather have in Dynasty. I mean, I think we can safely say that these are going to be players that continue to improve. These are going to be players that are just now stepping into their primes, where Stefon Diggs is on the decline. So if I'm looking at this, I would probably prefer, and I'd probably have Stefon Diggs, Nico Collins ranked almost back-to-back in redraft leagues this next season. But obviously, given the age that you're going to get with Nico and Dell, you have to be valuing Diggs at a discount in comparison to those two players. So I personally have Stefon Diggs ranked down there at like wide receiver 25. I have them right in the range of like the 110, 111, whereas the other Houston wide receivers are up there near the 108. Now, if you look at all of the players that we have ranked in Houston, you will notice there's not a wide receiver room where there are 3 guys ranked this high anywhere else in my rankings. The reason for this is I believe that CJ Stroud is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL. I believe that all these wide receivers are good and talented in their own right. And I would expect this to be a top 5 passing offense in the NFL relatively easily. I mean, CJ Stroud this past year was number 1 in the NFL in passing yards per game as a rookie. He was number 2 in the NFL in adjusted yards per pass attempt as a rookie. The man was absurd. Now that you're bringing him this elite level weapon, I want to say that all 3 of these guys are going to be startable from a week-to-week perspective. There are going to be a lot of mouths to feed, but the volume should be there in this offense, where I'm completely fine rolling out Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins every single week. I think that this puts CJ Stroud from a dynasty perspective inside the same tier as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Now, looking over at our quarterback rankings, we just updated these on the site as well. Previously, I had Allen QB1, Mahomes QB2, but more importantly, I just had Allen and Mahomes in their own tier. I had CJ Stroud down there at quarterback 3, the tier below those 2 top names. But now that you're getting the additional weapon of Stephon Diggs coming in, and I think we can safely say this is one of the best wide receiver rooms in the NFL now, that you have 3 guys. I don't think there's another wide receiver room that's this deep. I think that CJ Stroud shouldn't necessarily be put ahead of Allen or Mahomes because we don't have the same sample size that we can look at with Stroud, right? We know quarterback age isn't really going to matter nearly as much as the other positions. So it's not like running back where you see Jahmyr Gibbs do anything. You're like, okay, running back 1 in Dynasty. No. Quarterback, it's an old man's game. You want the large sample size. So we still have CJ Stroud at QB3. But with that being said, I am putting CJ Stroud inside the same tier as those other guys. And I mean, I don't think that there's any argument that you can make now to take anybody else not named Mahomes or Allen over Stroud in a dynasty startup. Now, going over and looking at some of the options left over in Buffalo, the main guy that people should be excited about from a dynasty perspective is going to be Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid was a borderline top 5 tight end previously, still a borderline top 5 tight end now. I mean, this is someone that had a very good rookie season. He goes out, he has 91 targets through 16 games, 673 receiving yards. Obviously, a season that was much better in games that Dawson Knox missed versus in games which Dawson Knox played in. If you're going to look at the road of his screener for all rookie tight ends, Kincaid comps historically to like Greg Dulcich, Pat Frymuth, Caden Smith, Ian Thomas, Will Tye. Aaron Hernandez is like the main guy that, I mean, was able to go on and have that elite second season. Frymuth had a decent year too. The majority of these other guys were a little bit disappointing. It is surprising to look at tight end versus wide receiver, where wide receiver, we can say a lot of times, if you come out and show that you're very good as a rookie, we can assume that you're blowing up year 2. Tight end's not necessarily that situation. However, if you are looking at Dalton Kincaid, this is arguably the best situation you could find yourself in. The other top options are Samuel and Shakir, 2 wide receivers that really haven't proven anything. Kincaid's used pseudo as a slot wide receiver, not necessarily someone that's going to be playing, I mean, the traditional tight end role. So if you wanted to move Kincaid up inside, like being a borderline top 3 option at the position, I mean, you go for it. And I do think that this is a clear sell high moment for Shakir as well as Curtis Samuel. To look at Samuel, this is a wide receiver that at one point in his career I was excited for. But if we're going to be objective about it, he was drafted in the same class as Leonard Fournette, Cooper Kupp, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he was drafted way back in 2017. He's played 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. He's going into his 8th NFL season. He's going into his 8th NFL season, averaging 37 receiving yards per game. Obviously, this will be by far and away the best situation he's ever been in. But am I betting on a wide receiver going into year 8 to have some massive breakout? No, I'm not. We never see it. You're betting against all of history if you are betting on that. Shakir did take a step up in year 2. This is someone that had about 35 receiving yards per game, but I don't necessarily think that he was a phenomenal prospect. I mean, if we're really instead going to be looking at who benefits here, I think it's going to be people with the rookie pick 106 through 108. Because now I want to say we essentially have a wide receiver guaranteed to go round 1 to the Buffalo Bills in this draft. If Brian Thomas somehow makes it to Buffalo, if Adonai goes to Buffalo, if Xavier Worthy goes to Buffalo, if Ladd goes to Buffalo, if Keon Coleman, it doesn't matter if any of these guys go to Buffalo. They're playing with Josh Allen with no competition for targets and an offense that should be top 10 across the board in volume. So, I mean, I can see a world where Adonai Mitchell goes to the Buffalo Bills at the end of round 1. And then someone decides to push him ahead of Brock Bowers. And you're sitting there at the 108 and all of a sudden you're getting Bowers falling to you. And so I think if you have the 108, you're in a much better spot. If we assume that Buffalo has to go out there and take a wide receiver, I think you should be excited. But overall, across the board, please do not convince yourself otherwise. This hurts Nico Collins. This hurts Tank Dell. This hurts Stephon Diggs. This is the best wide receiver trio that we're going to see in the league, or pretty damn close to it. This should be one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. I don't have 3 wide receivers in any other offense ranked this high in my rankings. But the thing is, I don't know. The passing volume is going to be incredible. You have so much target competition, though. So, I mean, call your shot on these guys. Clearly, you'd rather, from a dynasty perspective, be rolling with Dell and Nico over Diggs, given the age. From a redraft perspective, I think I probably would rather have Diggs, to be honest with you. This helps Kincaid a lot. Shakir, Curtis Samuel are definitely going to get a value bump. But if I could sell either or for an early second, I'm probably out. But I think that's all I got for you. Appreciate you. Hope you have a great day. And hope you get to see you out with the video tomorrow.